All right, friends, I am here live and local from beautiful downtown Las Vegas, May the 8th. Yes, Thursday. Forgive me, yesterday was off. My voice just was not cooperating. So I had to take the day to rest it. And today, if everything works out, I will get through the next 2 hours without sounding like a chain smoker. All right, folks, greetings. Welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. We have a pope. Obviously, big news today. White smoke emerging from the tiny little stovepipe chimney above the Sistine Chapel, signaling that a pope was selected by the Conference of Cardinals. And the Pope, of all things, is an American. It's wild. He's from Chicago, just like me, born in Chicago. But he spent most of his career down in Peru, ministering there in that country in South America. So he's 69 years old. He's a young buck. Well, he's not that young, but he's a young guy. And he's chosen, by the way, Cardinal Provost, Robert Prevost, chosen the papal name Leo the 14th. Now, a couple of things to note here that I think are food for thought. I already went on X and called the guy a communist. Now, X, sometimes, you put something out there, there's a little bit of there's more nuance to it. So I want to get through who this guy is and look at it through a political lens. Folks, I'm not a Catholic. I love Catholics. And I love the Catholic Church. And a huge part of my family are devout Catholics. And they're some of the most lovely, wonderful people out there. I am looking at this, again, through a political lens. I'm looking at everything going on in the world. And I thought, personally, that the Catholic Church was not served well by the previous pope because he was, much more of a political animal than he ought to have been. Number one, and number two, I'm a socially conservative, politically conservative person, and I, felt that some of the changes he was making in the church were a little radical for my liking. So, setting that aside, looking at the future here and what we've got going on, fascinating to me is that this cardinal, now Pope, Robert Prevost, was very active on X. Keep telling you folks, you got to be on X. Little did we know that the future Pope would be on the platform. And if you look at the sum and total of his activity on social media, you'll find that he's pretty conservative on social issues and very progressive on social matters. He's tweeted extensively and retweeted policies on social justice, for example. So, conservative on social issues, progressive on social justice matters. So, look, a lot of overlay, I think you'll see, with Pope Francis's emphasis on compassion for environmental matters, on migrants, global inequalities, that kind of stuff. Now, of course, this is what, a lot of religions, Christian religions, are about. But I think, this guy, to me, seems like he's been fairly critical, for example, of Trump and of Vance. He has directly confronted Vance's policies, J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, policies and statements. Vance himself is a Catholic. So I'm painting a picture. Now, he's a registered Republican. He's voted in his time that he has been in the U.S. He's voted in Republican primaries. He's an active voter. And he seems to have voted, for Republicans and Republican candidates. So, just pointing this out. he doesn't it doesn't fit neatly into a liberal or conservative camp. I think it sort of fits the nuance of modern Catholic doctrine, right? Where and again, also the other thing is he was a cardinal in the church responsible for advancing the Pope's agenda. So Pope Francis had social justice priorities. He did. He was a liberal left-wing guy, no question about it. And so the current, the body of cardinals, that supported him, responsible for supporting and advancing that agenda, would have done so and would have done so publicly. So we'll see, is my point. We will see. Now, I want to go back to Pope John Paul II, who, of course, was, much created much shock when he was selected the first Polish pope ever. And I think one of the reasons that John Paul was selected back when he was in the throes of the Cold War was to break communism, not just in Poland, but in the Eastern Bloc. And, go back and look at Pope John Paul II, I think one of the instrumental figures of the opposition to the Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe. There's no question. He was a moral force of nature that fought tooth and nail, devoted, dedicated anti-communist. And to this day, I view Pope John Paul II as one of the best popes of the modern era. Now, you could. I'm not saying this is what was intended, but it could be seen. The selection of the first American cardinal, the first American pope, right, could be seen as perhaps an effort by the Conference of Cardinals, the church itself, to use this American pope, this new American pope, to counter Trump and conservatives writ large. I'm not saying, I wasn't in the room. It seems to me that there is something that not necessarily coincidental about this, right? Now, if they had picked Cardinal Dolan, right, that's something different. Cardinal Dolan, of course, is, I think, close friends, or at least very friendly with Trump and an ally. Of course, they knew each other from New York for many years. But this guy, you look at the new pope and some of the stuff, and he's a globalist, okay? And he's every bit as woke as Francis, it seems, from the kind of stuff he's retweeted. Might be a better salesman of it, particularly given the fact that he is from the U.S., from Chicago, of all places. One of his final posts on X before being elected by the conclave in the Sistine Chapel was a retweet of a message from a Catholic commentator. This is interesting. I'm just Rocco Palmo, who slammed on April 14th Trump's partnership with El Salvador and their president, Nayib Bukele. Quote, as Trump and Bukele use Oval to, and there are some laughing emojis, feds elicit deportation of a U.S. resident, once an undocked Salvadorian himself, now D.C., Evelio, there's some bishop asks, do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet? This kind of stuff. So they're talking about, I think, the Maryland man, Abrego Garcia. Now he's, by the way, Robbie, side note, on Mr. Maryland man, on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the human trafficker or so alleged, wife beater or so alleged, gang member or so alleged. By the way, you see the media now have stopped referring to him as the Maryland man. They are now referring to him as an El Salvadorian. I've seen that number of places. So apparently the whole thing didn't work out as planned. Nonetheless, I'm getting back to the Pope. A lot of political discussions on his Twitter account. He was very active and largely progressive. Okay, on matters of social justice and woke topics. All right, and I think you gotta realize this isn't happening. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Francis appointed. There's 133 cardinals voting. It's a very fascinating statistic. 133 cardinals made the decision of who the next pope would be. Of them, 108 were appointed by Pope Francis himself. Francis, and this is what radicals do, succeeded in remaking of the Catholic Church. So I read some tweet somewhere from Matt Walsh saying, what you non-Catholics don't understand, this is ordained by God and this is divine inspiration. And I'm not Catholic, but to me, I can see this. This has been a takeover by Pope Francis and the progressives of the church. And this is exactly what leftists have done in our country across the world. As a matter of fact, of various institutions, including schools, universities, government, departments, etc. So, that's my reading of it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Fascinating, folks. I just got a sort of a deluge of updates, some good, some bad. I'll get these processed here in the next break. This is what happens. You do a live show, you've got lots going on and got everything prepared, and then news comes up. Robbie, verify this. Apparently, the Supreme Court has just ruled that Trump can, in fact, use the Alien Enemies Act. I don't know if they've made this decision on the substance, on the merits of the case, or if this is simply a lifting of the injunctions in place. But I am hearing that Amy Coney Barrett voted with the libs again. Just noting that. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Sam at what'srightshow.com. Sam at what'srightshow.com. That's my email. And if I sound a little bit different to you folks, last week I got sick for about 24 hours and I got through it and everything was fine. And then this week I just have the thing in my throat. I cannot get rid of it. And my voice gradually has been going from bad to worse. So took the day off from radio yesterday, hoping today I would be better. And I just am not at 100%. So if it sounds like somebody different, it is. Matter of fact, I feel like I'm somebody different. I can hear it in my own ears that it's not quite me, but it is me. I promise. All right, welcome to the What's Right Show. So, I want to talk about trade here, if I may, because of course there was the big announcement earlier today that there was a deal struck with the UK. And this was yesterday, today at a press conference. A UK deal struck on trade. This is what Trump said. It's important because, of course, a lot of people said, Trump's not making a deal. He's not setting a deal. He's not doing anything. What's going on? And voila, we have the official announcement of a deal with one of our key strategic trading partners, the UK.
We just made a very big deal with the UK, United Kingdom, on trade, which is shocking everybody. They said, oh, gee. And we just had the Ukraine. We just were notified that Ukraine just approved our big rare earth deal, which could be worth trillions of dollars. A lot. And overall, we're doing very well. We have a lot of things happening. We have a very big conversation in Switzerland taking place this weekend with China. Has anyone heard of China recently? Yes. And they want to make a deal very badly, and I wouldn't be surprised, but we have tremendous things happening on trade, the likes of which we've never seen before.
I have a fun question for you. Who does this put pressure on in Europe? Boy, I think I put the answer to the question in my question. This is excellent news for us, but it's a cudgel to use against the EU. Right? Trump wants to get a deal done with the EU as well. We need to do that. But what is happening now is we're saying, aha, look, we've got this deal going with the United Kingdom. We've got everything. It's going to be great. We're going to build a great relationship. And all of a sudden, the EU is going to have some FOMO. For you kids in the back, that's fear of missing out. So it's I think it's a great. It's all good news. That's my point, right? It's all good news. So just letting you know. By the way, we didn't get to it too deeply here because, of course, lots going on, other things. But the Ukraine mineral deal, I told you this was going to happen. I told you why it was important. And it's already, I think, starting to make some ripples in the situation there vis-a-vis Russia. And that is, look, if we have and that's another deal that happened last week, if we have a partnership with Ukraine to mine rare earth minerals, now America has a business relationship with Ukraine. We get our investment back. Many of you, I know, would feel very differently about supporting Ukraine if we knew that the money that we're putting out there is coming back to us. I think there's two kind of principal things at play. On one hand, we certainly think that this war, I believe that this war can end, and I want it to end, and it's not about money. But on the other hand, it's, of course, about the money. And Biden and his cabal of idiots were spending money like drunken whores, sending it over to Ukraine. And I suspect we're going to find out that a good chunk of that outlay ended up, back in Democratic people's coffers, right? So, yeah, it's like cash back. I guarantee it, right? I believe that happened. Now, so it doesn't, the war still needs to end. Now, the mineral deal could also help affect that. Not only are we going to get paid back, but we also, all right, are going to end up in a position, and this is great, we will end up in a position where Russia now knows that any further incursions into the territory that is set now and defined now, borders, basically what the territory that was taken by Russia, Russia knows that any further incursion into Ukraine now brings it into direct conflict with the United States. You think Putin wants to do that with Trump as president? Methinks not, right? So Putin's got a little problem now. Trump gave him an opportunity to talk Turkey, to make concessions, to end it. Putin said no. Be honest, also, Ukraine said no. All right. So Trump goes, all right, well, here's what we're going to do. I think you're both wrong. I think you're both right. It doesn't matter. We're drawing a line, and this is what it's going to be, and come back to me when you're ready to talk. In the meantime, I'm going to do what's right for the U.S., and we're going to make a deal with Ukraine. And by the way, Vladimir, speaking to Putin, this is a deal that you should have made with us because Russia has some of these same minerals, as I understand it, available themselves. This is how you do diplomacy, right? This is how you do these things. It's a masterclass. Folks, you're watching, this is incredible. And mark my words, it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're getting there. We're getting in the right direction of ending this bloodbath once and for all. So, that's just my take. And so everything here is happening strategically. Now, let's talk if we're going to talk about war and trade, because I think the two go hand in hand, let's talk about what's going on in India and Pakistan and China, because China right now is playing for keeps, and they're absolutely, Trump has China on the mat for the first time in my adult life. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be right back after this. Folks, I'm not seeing any confirmation here about the Supreme Court decision, so we're going to pass on calling that a done deal until I see something else. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Okay, Sam at what'srightshow.com, at What's Right Sam on Twitter, X, etc. All right, I want to obviously briefly here touch on the India-Pakistan conflict. We have a hot war now going on. It's skirmishes, maybe, but maybe a slightly more than that. This all in the wake of the April 22nd terror attack by Islamists from Pakistan who went to an area called Jammu and Kashmir. This is an Indian-administered area, but it is in, as I understand it, contested territory. So there's some dispute as to who is the rightful owner of this, whether it's the Indian government or the Pakistanis. In any event, right, now we have war, or at least conflict. And one thing that a lot of people are not talking about is that Pakistan is supplied almost entirely and supported by the Chinese. Whereas India has a closer relationship, not an exclusive relationship, but a closer relationship with us here in the U.S. Now, what does this have to do with trade? I was mentioning that bottom of the hour. It all has to do with trade. Remember that before this terror attack, and even in the kind of immediate wake of it, we were talking to J.D. Vance visited, by the way, India, and we are talking to India and working with India on doing what? Forming an exclusive trade partnership. We want to have India in the American camp. And this is why I suspect, if this conflict broadens, that America will likely support India. I know everybody, all the libs right now are waiting which flag to put in their bios on social media. Which country are we supporting? And I think a lot of liberals don't know what quite to do because, of course, I suppose they're going to support the side that had the Islamic terrorists attack the non-Islam people. But they're also confused because both countries are people of color. So this is where it gets complicated. Anyway, China will want to push this war in order to distract India from forming to distract India, period, full stop. They don't want India to take next steps with the United States in a trade deal. How do I know this? Very simple. There's a couple of things, right? On one hand, we have, we had, in the wake of the escalating tariffs with China, the U.S. did, a carve out for certain things like computer chips and cell phones. And then the next thing is we heard that India would supply exclusively iPhones for the American market. What do you think it would do to China's economy? I mean, it's one company, one product. It's kind of wild to think about this. One company, one product, Apple, the iPhone. The loss of just iPhone manufacturing for the U.S. market. What do you think that would do for the Chinese economy? There would be a measurable effect of that, right? I mean, that would create some sort of measurable problem. It wouldn't be nothing, is my point. And so what's going on sort of behind the scenes here is that the Chicoms are, funding the Pakistanis in order to destabilize India. Now, we don't have evidence of this, but enough people are talking about this happening. And what else is true, is certainly true, is that the Pakistanis have combat aircraft, for example, from China. And so you're going to see for the first time, I think, Robbie, don't quote me on this, I think for the first time, we will see Chinese manufactured military equipment in combat. And that means, I think China's, very, this is going to be an interesting, feedback, and will help China develop even better weaponry. So, Robbie, what's that in terms of, $45 to $70 billion loss in iPhone manufacturing revenue. It's not nothing. 45 to 70 billion. That's just one product. If they can move microchips too, if they can move other things out, could end up being hundreds of billions of dollars annually. China is on the mat. They are desperate for a deal. This is why they are making overtures to Trump for de-escalation. You're hearing these kind of things happen. And, by the way, Trump got asked about this. He got asked about China because everybody out there has been hand-wringing for the past month. Oh, my gosh. Ever since Liberation Day, they've been absolutely melting out. When are we going to make a deal? You got to do it quickly. And Trump's like, well, listen, we can't make a deal quickly. We have to make the right deal. And so Trump, this was on Wednesday, 2 days ago in a press conference, Trump gets asked about the tariffs, and this is the question, and the answer is very short.
China says in order to have substantive negotiations, you have to bring down your 145% tariffs. Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
Are you willing to bring your tariffs down? No. We want to get them to the table. We got to be nice. No. Trump understands something that a lot of people don't, which is this trade war, the longer it goes, will disproportionately hurt the Chinese. The economy in China is far less resilient at this point than anybody else's. Certainly than ours. And at the same time, right, Trump is making a deal with the UK. I think, if he makes and the deal's there to be had with India. Remember, even as recently as last week, we're going back and forth on what is included or excluded, and everybody's saying take the deal, but the deal keeps getting better. So Trump's waiting for the right deal. Even Liz Peek, who's a columnist for The Hill, had to admit that Trump's UK deal is really good. Here's what she said this morning, on Fox Business.
And to Trump's point, this negotiation or discussion has been going on for a quarter of a century. It's amazing. Biden very much wanted to do a trade deal with the UK, couldn't get it done. So I think the fact that they accomplished this in record short order, let's remember that most trade deals take years to accomplish. This is a major achievement. And I think they needed it. They needed to show the American public that the tariffs were going to produce something valuable. They did produce something valuable. We're going to have more exports of different kinds of products going to the UK, opening up a country that has been, for all that it's, great ties with the U.S., but resistant, particularly to U.S. agriculture. And I was really struck by Brooke Rollins' incredible excitement about exponentially increased shipments of beef, which I think means actually we don't ship much at all. But at least we have now a market for that. And our farmers are very worried about tariffs. This is a very good day for them.
It's a great day. And there will be more great days to come in the future. This is not, this was all foreseeable. I mean, guys, folks, I've been, maintaining my cool over here, as many of you have been fretting. And it's okay. I understand it. Uncertainty is, by definition, unsettling. And we want to see things done. We want to see progress. And, I guess, let me step back from all of this. It isn't kind of the point of the 100-day retrospective on Trump's, first 3+ months in office? Isn't that milestone the opportunity to look back, not just in the momentary news cycle, but to look back over a period of time and go, my goodness, let's see if what we've accomplished. I mean, Trump is advancing with breakneck speed in fulfilling all of his campaign promises. And he's doing it in spite of the tremendous headwind from the courts and even from, the folks in Washington. I mean, the Senate, I don't know, you see I'm going to get to it later, but Ed Martin tanked essentially single-handedly by Tom Tillis, who's running for re-election as a Republican in North Carolina. May he burn in hell. And by hell, I mean, may he lose his seat. I mean, it's complete loser behavior. I talked about this before. I completely lost my voice. It's just bad, bad, bad. And then we have Scott Bessent and Trump's push into crypto and all this tanked in a vote in the Senate today. I mean, look, we can move into the 21st century. We can watch everything fall apart as we dither. But that's the nature of the Senate. It is conservative and self-serving. But what we have here is forward movement, is my point. And you can look back, 100 days, but you can also just look back 30. You can go back to what was, Liberation Day in early August, second week of August, to now and say, hey, we're starting to get these deals inked. We're getting them inked, and they're official. And for Great Britain, who already is cut off in many ways from the European market, and where the Europeans, being vengeful little punks that they are, and I don't mean Europeans like the people, I mean the bureaucrats in Brussels in the European Union. They're vindictive. Yes, they're vindictive. They want to make an example. They want to punish Great Britain for Brexit and serve as an example to other countries across Europe who might be considering it. For example, Italy. The president there, Meloni, has made mention of this, and I think there's some takers on it. So anyway, the point is you start to trade, and Trump recognizing this. Let's make an example out of a positive example out of Great Britain. The United Kingdom, we're going to trade with you. We're going to form into a partnership. And along these lines, I think it's important to say, and I'm going to get to this here at the top of the hour because I missed it yesterday when I lost my voice. I want to go back and look at this Carney meeting in the White House, new Prime Minister of Canada. This was very good. Now, what was good about it? Well, I'll get to it here. Let me take a quick break. I gotta take a pause. I'll tell you what I thought was the best part of it. Everybody's piling on that Carney didn't speak, get in a word edgewise, but I'll get at what I think was really the takeaway. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right show, is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right show. If you're just joining us, talking about everything going on in the world and at home, it's all interconnected as we watch President Trump make deals and get things done. And I think, I think that, I watched, of course, the presser on just the other day here in the White House on Tuesday, when Trump met Mark Carney, the new prime minister of Canada. And the meeting was, the clear takeaway was that Trump was very kind and very gracious, and at the same time, absolutely took over the meeting, alphaed his way, if you will, across, over Mark Carney. But one of my takeaways, is that I think that it really was speaking much more to the Canadian audience than to Carney, or I think to anybody here at home. I don't know. I vacillate on whether Trump thinks of the 51st state idea of the U.S. and Canada joining up as a country as it being real now. I go back and forth on this. I watched the press conference. Trump is sticking to it, right? He is sticking to the idea about Canada becoming, quote unquote, the 51st state. And here's the exchange, by the way. So the reporter asks Trump if he's changed his mind on the 51st state business. And Trump, this is Trump's response. And Carney cuts in for just a few words, and they go back and forth. So this is the answer to the question, if he still believes that there should be a 51st, Canada should be a 51st state.
I still believe that, but it takes two to tango, right? But no, I do. I mean, I believe it would be a massive tax cut for the Canadian citizens. And it's also a beautiful, as a real estate developer, I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said that's the way it was meant to be. But, there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway, because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think
Mark Carney's face.
It would really be a wonderful marriage, because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past.
So hold the tape. You see that? I'm just gonna go back a moment. Just go back a moment. Here, Carney's talking. He goes, well, it's not for sale. Not ever. Let's talk to the owners of Canada.
With the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months. It's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and
there
what
it
we can
is.
build together.
Hey, right when he says that, Trump does this whole thing with his head. He's like, don't never say never, right? You see it. Those of you, by the way, watching on YouTube or Spotify have the video here that I've paused. So let's continue playing the tape.
What we can build together, and we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the president just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership, and I'll say this as well, that the president has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
And they have, I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low, and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
Who's he talking to here? I think he's talking to the Albertans who are thinking of splitting from Canada. Nobody's saying this, right? Everybody thinks Trump's just kind of, being a blowhard. Trump is talking to the independent-minded Albertans. He is quietly encouraging the Canadians who want out of Canada. How does this benefit, by the way, the question, of course, is how does it benefit the U.S.? And, look, Canada is a country we've got to wrestle from China's orbit. And the way to do that is not to try to outspend or out-finesse the Chinese. The way you do it is you lay down some tough terms and bring the China-friendly government to its knees. And that is exactly what's going on here. All right, folks, be right back. Another hour of the What's Right show up next. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. So, as of yesterday, we're all required to have real ID when flying across the country, going to airports, checking in, FYI. And it's apparently, the TSA says it's seeing about 81% compliance. Can you imagine how absolutely devastating it would be, maddening, to be headed on your non-refundable vacation, family trip, let's say to Disney World, okay? And you're, a couple of parents, with their 2-3 kids. I mean, this is the thousands of dollars in committed money. And you get to the airport and you don't have your real ID driver's license. By the way, it doesn't have to be just a license. You can have a passport or a passport card. I don't know, Robbie, is there anything else that you can? Permanent resident card, that works. Passport card. There's some other obscure options I don't think most people have. Or you just get licensed. But the point is, it's not something you can get very quickly if you don't already have, a passport at home, locked in the safe. So I'm just, letting you know this is a big deal. Go get this done if you haven't already. Or alternatively, if you have a passport, travel with a passport or these other IDs that you can find on the TSA website. So I'm just letting you know. By the way, out in California, I need to mention this too before we return back to Canada. California has scrapped its new bar exam. This is, it's interesting to me because, of course, I took the California bar exam a few years back. And I took the California bar exam when it was a 3-day exam. It is now a 2-day exam only. So, that's it's just saying it's they've already begun to dumb it down, and the part here. So what California tried to do is make their own multiple choice questions on the bar exam. Previously, they used some that were produced by a national organization, and I think the people in California say it's because of the money. They wanted to save money. I think they wanted to make these questions easier and more woke. That's what's going on here. So they created a new test, and the test was a disaster. It was a complete boondoggle. And the state Supreme Court in California went in and told the state bar, you can't do this. Made them adjust the scores on the February test, which was the first test to be administered with the new questions. They were testing this for a while. I remember hearing this, that you'd have a random, very bizarre question on the exam that had nothing, that just basically was so out of left field, and it was presumed to be, something there that was a test question. But this California, anyway, why can't we just keep standards high and even for all professionals everywhere? You know what they're not saying? They're not telling you right now that not all lawyers are, took the same exam. That's one thing that they don't advertise. There are a lot of lawyers out there who got extra time because they have ADHD or whatever, anxiety. Doctor writes a letter. Little Johnny has anxiety. Well, little Johnny is 25 years old. Little Johnny wants to be an attorney. Little Johnny wants to represent people and their very real life problems. But he gets an exemption for the bar exam. He can take 6 hours instead of 3 for a particular section. I think that's a big difference. I think it'd been a lot easier had I had more time to do every part. I can tell you that pretty clearly. So they do all this kind of stuff, and so there's lawyers that and I went to school with people. They were doing this a decade ago. I went to school with people who disappeared and took the test in a different room, and I don't know. To me, it's a form of cheating, and it robs the public of what the bar exam ought to be, which is to demonstrate a even minimum proficiency standard that ought to be set fairly high for people who want to take on the responsibility of representing the general public. It's the same thing with pilots, same thing with doctors. They want diversity, right? The politicians, the wokesters, the corporate boards. So what do? Well, we're not getting diversity with these high standards. So with these soft bigotry of low expectations, lower standards across the whole thing. And yes, they get their precious diversity. But when your plane is barreling toward the earth nose first, you're not necessarily thinking about diversity. You're thinking, oh crap, I'm going to die. So there it is. I don't know. Do you think that Mark Carney Tuesday, Robbie, had a moment? Because I was looking at his face during this press conference. The Prime Minister of Canada, Trump, is just trumping all over him. And Trump is being charming. Trump's not being a dick. He's just being charming. He's being adorable, and he's talking directly to Canadians. And wouldn't it be great if we all got together and sang Kumbaya? Think of all the benefits. Excuse me, Mr. President, comes the Prime Minister of Canada. Excuse me, Mr. President, I'd just like to say Canada's not for sale. And as he's saying it, Trump's like, never do. Face like, never say never. And then he goes, Mark, let me tell you, Mark. I'm going to tell you, Mark. And then Carney goes, Mr. President, Mr. President. This is a guy who ran on his campaign was, I'm going to be the guy to stand up to Trump. Objectively speaking, Robbie, could anyone perceive that he stood up to Trump on Tuesday? No. Producer Robbie is shaking his head. I see him in the other room shaking his head. Nope. Absolutely not. I mean, there were some moments. I know. No. Here's how it all began. Would you like to say a few words? This is how it opens up. Hey, Prime Minister of Canada, I've been, crap talking about you for a while, and is Trump, right? Trump's been demanding a takeover of Canada. Would you like to say a few words?
Mark, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'm on the edge of my seat, actually, for the big announcement. But thank you for your hospitality and above all, for your leadership. You're a transformational president, focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl, and other opioids, and securing the world. And I've been elected with my colleagues here, with the help of my colleagues here. I'm going to spread the credit to transform Canada with a similar focus on the economy, securing our borders. Again, on fentanyl, much greater focus on defense and security, securing the Arctic and developing the Arctic. And the history of Canada and the U.S. is we're stronger when we work together, and there's many opportunities to work together. And I look forward to, addressing some of those issues that we have, but also finding those areas of mutual cooperation so we can move forward.
That's great. Very nice. Thank you very much. It's a very nice statement.
That's a very nice statement. Very nice, says Trump. I love it. He's just, Carney was all full of piss and vinegar heading into this, and all of a sudden he shows up. He's like, well, we just want to be nice and we want to get along and everything's fine and hunky-dory. He rode that anti-Trump Canadian anger just long enough to get elected, and then immediately just turned around and went full lapdog. Objectively, that's what this comes across as. Yeah, I'll give you some examples of that. I got to take a break here. The What's Right show will be back in a moment. Don't go anywhere, folks. This hour brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Oh boy, Joe Biden went on The View. This is starting to make some waves. I'll play a clip here of that in a bit, in a moment that just absolutely will make you all shake your heads. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. First, Mark Carney the other day, just example after example of Trump winning, even with folks that have come out to say that they are separating from the U.S. Remember, that's Carney a week ago was saying that our relationship, with Canada was over, that they were done with us, everything's that. And here he is practically begging Trump to work with Canada and to form a strategic partnership. Here, a reporter asks, it's a little bit difficult to hear. A reporter basically asks Trump, how would you react if Canada decided not to shop in the store of America as much as before and decided to partner with other countries? So what if Canada stopped buying American products, right? That's the nature of the question. So you're going to hear the question and then Trump's absolutely devastating answer.
How do you react if Canada decided not to shop in the American store as much as before and decided to partner with other countries?
Well, we don't do much business with Canada from our standpoint. They do a lot of business with us. We're at like 4%, and usually those things don't last very long. We have great things, great product, the kind of product we sell nobody else can sell, including military. Look, we make the best military equipment in the world, and Canada buys our military equipment, which we appreciate, but we make the best military equipment in the world by far, the missiles, the submarines. Everything we have is really top notch. We have the best equipment in the world. We have a lot of things, but Canada, it does a lot more business with us than we do with Canada.
Well, there's the answer, right? Now, what do you think? The Canadian position on this is? Well, Mark Carney goes, "Oh, if I may, I have a response."
We are the largest client of the United States in the totality of all the goods. So we are the largest client of the United States. We have a tremendous auto sector between the two of us, and the changes that made have been helpful. 50% of a car that comes from Canada is American. That's not like anywhere else in the world. And to your question about is there one thing? No, this is a bigger discussion. There are much bigger forces involved, and this will take some time and some discussions, and that's why we're here, to have those discussions, and that is represented by who's sitting around the table.
See, the conflict is, and this is very friendly. We're not. This is not going to be like we had another little blow up with somebody else. That was a much different. This is a very friendly conversation.
Zelensky.
But, we want to make our own cars. We don't really want cars from Canada, and we put tariffs on cars from Canada. And at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. And we don't want steel from Canada because we're making our own steel, and we're having massive steel plants being built right now as we speak. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things because we want to be able to do it ourselves.
There it is. I think that's the whole point of this, right? We want to do it ourselves. We want to reshore American manufacturing back into the country. So there it is. Why, again, we're building cars in Canada, but we're, 50% of the parts are from the U.S. Why do that? Just make them in the U.S., ship them to Canada. If they want them, they want them. If they don't, they don't. But they can't refuse or tariff at a high rate American products and then expect us to buy their products at a fair, reasonable rate. That's not fair. That's bullcrap. And that's the nature of this argument. When you really boil it down to the essential, that's it. Trump reminds Carney who holds the cards. This also is very.
There's no reason for us to be subsidizing Canada. Canada's a place that will have to be able to take care of itself economically. I assume they can. I will tell you that Trudeau, when I spoke to him, I used to call him Governor Trudeau. I think that probably didn't help his election. But when I spoke to him, I said, so why are we taking your cars? Why are we taking we want to make them ourselves. I said, and if the price of your cars went up, or if we put a tariff on your cars of 25%, what would that mean to you? He said that would mean the end of Canada. He actually said that to me. It's hard to justify subsidizing Canada to the tune of maybe $200 billion a year. We protect Canada militarily, and we always will. We're going to, that's not a money thing. But we always will. But, it's not fair. But why are we subsidizing Canada $200 billion a year, or whatever the number might be? It's a very substantial number.
And then finally, reporter asks if anything Carney says, right, to complete the humiliation, if anything Carney says can make him reconsider the tariffs.
Is there anything the Prime Minister can say to you today to change your mind on tariffing Canada?
Tariffing cars?
Tariffing Canada. Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that would get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
Is there anything that Mr. Carney could tell you to get you to change your mind on tariff in Canada? No. Trump. Folks, I'm just explaining to you what this is and what this is designed to do. Again, Canada is in the significantly weaker position. And you can tell based on the fact that Carney came there to negotiate. He has to solve this. He can't, it was all fun and games, taking Chinese money, making security guarantees to China, doing all this stuff, capitulating and playing antagonist to the U.S., while also financially raping our country in trade. That was all fun and games. That all was allowed to happen. That all was allowed to happen when Joe Biden was sleeping his way through dementia in the White House. And I'll play that for you here when we get back from the break. The craziest stuff. He's doing a media tour. What the hell? Robbie, what the hell is this? But now Trump is in office and he's telling China no mas. Can't do this anymore. And Canada's going, and Canada, everybody, the EU, mark my words, that's a big one. Negotiating with them is a big one. And as for China, I'm convinced all of this is designed to bring China absolutely to ruin. Who wants a hot war? We could just cut their nuts off by refusing to trade with them. Tricky, yes. Painful, yes. Small price to pay for bringing a significant adversary to their financial ruin. Much easier to have a trade war and not getting all your toys at the store, whatever people are concerned with. Oh my gosh, we're not going to have the bubble blasters. I read a piece about that. I think in the Wall Street Journal, they're lamenting the loss of bubble blasters. You can't buy the bubble guns, Robbie, because of the trade war with China. Well, you know what? You can keep your bubble guns if it means that we right the power dynamic that ought to exist between us and the Chinese communists. Seems pretty straightforward to me. And we can thank our lucky stripes that the president that was bought and paid for with Chinese dirty money is out of the White House. And I mean, of course, Joe Biden and his whole family. When we come back, I'll play some recent Biden appearances, including one this morning on The View. Ooh boy, you're in for a treat. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So, all right, let's just talk. I gotta say, Joe Biden, you gotta talk about. I will not let this go. To me, the Democratic Party is absolutely has absolutely irretrievably corrupted itself in the way it has protected Joe Biden over the last 4.5, 6 years. It really predates the 2020 election. Biden was already not doing well back then, that much is for certain, and then gradually through the presidency, certainly got worse. And he's been doing some media appearances. It's a lot of it's not good. He's trying to do some speeches even to earn some money, also embarrassing. So here, it started. Let's see. Biden was where was this? I'll get in it. Yes. Okay. So the first one happened a couple days ago, and it aired on Wednesday. It was an interview with the BBC, and the interviewer basically asked him if he should have withdrawn earlier from the race. Okay. Simple, right?
Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered. We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded, and what happened was I had become what we had set out to do. No one thought we could do. And become so successful in our agenda, it was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now.
What? I was so successful in my agenda, and this is Biden, that it's hard to say I'm just going to stop right now. He was so successful that our right track, wrong track numbers for the country were underwater by 30 points. 30! Not 5, not 7, not 3, not 10, 30 plus. This is insane. So then this morning, this is a much longer clip. I have to play the whole thing. This is brutal. Biden is on The View, and it's even worse than this.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. in the final year of your presidency. What is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one. Number two, you know, think of what we're left with. We're left with a circumstance where we had an insurrection when I started. We did not sense a civil war. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying, 1 million people dying. And we're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And you know, one of the things and
Alyssa, you know, one of the things I think
Here comes
is that
Dr. Jill.
the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. I mean, he'd get up, he'd put in a full day, and then at night I'd be in bed, you know, reading my book, and he was still on the phone reading his briefings, working with staff. I mean, it was nonstop. It's the White House. Being president is not like a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a life that you live. You live it 24 hours a day. That phone can ring at 11 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning. It's constant. You never leave it. And Joe worked really hard. I think he was a great president. And if you look at things today, if you look at things today, give me Joe Biden anytime.
That's worth the invitation to come to the show.
Yay! Oh my gosh. What a clown show. She had to save him. He was wandering through, you know, if this was a deposition or testimony in open court as an attorney, I'd say objection non-responsive. That wasn't the answer to the question. They asked him last year, by the way, we know that the deterioration went back further. She asked him, the last year, you know, year or two of the White House, whatever you were, you know, there's a cover-up of your declining mental state. And he starts talking about, well, we had January 6th, insurrection, we had not since the Civil War, and we had COVID, and I mean, it's what is this? What is this? The more he talks, particularly now, which is less than 4 months out of office, the more obvious it is that he clearly wasn't capable. And in this exchange, what have I told you about this for the last 2 years? I've told you that Jill Biden hung on here, demanded he run again, pushed Biden, her husband, to to continue in the race for another 4 years because it was a lifestyle thing for her. You can see how invested she is in it. And it's not for nothing, right? She pushed and pushed and pushed. And when you look at the answer in the interview that Biden gave the day before, don't know, I think it was probably recorded a couple days before, but aired in any event, aired yesterday. Biden says, when asked should he have withdrawn earlier, so I was so successful. It's hard to say. It's hard to say I could stop now. And that's exactly what his family was pumping him up to say. The lifestyle, as Jill Biden puts it, being president is 24/7, dang straight. Butlers and chefs at your disposal, Air Force jets, private jets, 747s at your beck and call, Secret Service agents, motorcades, never a red light, all the best medical care, people coming to you, living in the executive mansion. The only person that is a tall lift for, apparently, is Michelle Obama. By the way, Michelle Obama, we just say this, right? I'm going back to the complaint that she put up on her podcast, how difficult it was being president. She had to buy her own food. Can you Americans understand what a challenge it is to buy your own food? They made us pay for travel on the presidential plane when it was our kids coming with us on vacation. Lady, do you know how many people in the last 2 years have not had vacations to go on because they can't afford them? Democratic Party. You know what this all fits in? Did you see this bit from Bernie? The ultimate limousine liberal. When he was doing his tour there with AOC, they got caught flying on private jets. All right, Brett Baer. I know he's a Fox guy, but Brett Baer is a middle of the road center left guy. I honestly think so he softballs really this nice question, sort of, but asks Senator Sanders about this enormous expenditure for private jets for this tour. And Bernie Sanders becomes incensed. Did you see this?
You know, Alyssa Slotkin, senator from Michigan, she said you shouldn't be using oligarch. It's over people's head. You've gotten criticized from other people. Free Beacon says Bernie Sanders spent $221,000 on private jets fighting the oligarchy tour, paid for by friends of Bernie Sanders. That you've spent millions of dollars in campaign funds on private jet travel over the years. How do you push back on both of those things?
When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during a campaign mode at National Airport?
No. It doesn't. But he's also not fighting the oligarchy.
No. You run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that. That's what campaign travel is about. We've done it in the past. We're going to do it in the future.
You guys, we know this. We know this, but he just said it out loud. For as long as I can remember, kids, when I was in high school, kids would tell me, well, communism is great. Communism is great. Everybody has the same. It's fair, Sam. It's fair. It's justice. It's equity. It's all this stuff. And as a high school student, I would look these clowns in the face and go, so everyone has the same, including the president of the country, the Politburo, what's the Politburo? Well, in the communist system, it's the body of comrades that run the country. Well, I mean, yeah, they all have the same. Show me a country where that's been done this way. You can't. These communists believe that you and I should all be in some sort of dirt poor subsistence poverty, standing in the queue at the United counter, 150 people deep. Yes, that's good for you. It's good for me. By the way, I did that yesterday. I had to fly. And I got to the airport and there's nobody there. Like nobody there. It was beautiful. I felt like Bernie Sanders on a private jet. But I digress. Poverty for thee, but not for me, says the commie Pinko. And in practice, every Bolshevik regime out there did precisely this. People were poor, the masses were poor, the workers suffered, while being celebrated and feted and used as propaganda tools, but they suffered. And the people that ran the country lived in opulence, really. Had food imported from Switzerland, had medicine imported from the U.S., had all sorts of goodies at their disposal. Yeah. Kim Jong-un ain't starving. Little fat rocket man is doing just fine while people are literally eating bugs and rocks in his country. Not a lot of daylight, actually, at the end of the day, between Bernie Sanders and Kim Jong-un. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. because you deserve what's right. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. By the way, I have to mention this, right? James Lankford, who is another senator, Rhino senator from Tennessee, Oklahoma, excuse me. Oklahoma, a deep red state. What's up with these red states giving us these weenie, useless Rhino Republican politicians? Went on CNN to talk absolute gibberish. And you'll know it's gibberish the minute you hear this, because you listen to this program and are well informed on the topic.
What's been confusing on this is some people see due process like as an American citizen. That's a right to a jury trial. That's all those different things. That's not true for due process for someone who's not a citizen of the United States. It's a different process. It's often just literally what people call an immigration judge is not a typical federal judge or a state judge. This is someone that's in the bureaucracy, that their task for DHS is that task on it. So they're a government employee career. That's an immigration judge. So it's a very different process for it. But yes, there's a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed in the country.
Yeah, but this is the guy. Lankford's the guy who was pushing he was the Republican Trojan horse, pushing that ridiculous border bill. This is the border bill that gave a bunch of money to Ukraine and then basically did nothing to secure the border and was being used as a cudgel against Trump. But yes, there's a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed from the country. Well, yes. And I kind of dances around this, jury trial nonsense, but, he's right about the part that there is someone in the bureaucracy. But it doesn't have to be a judge. It doesn't have to be a legal process. It can be an immigration officer that figures this stuff out. And doesn't have to be protracted. It can be done in the moment. What's coming confusing on some people see due process? Okay, this, and of course, now the left is going crazy with this. So, Jamie Raskin, Democrat from Maryland, wants to do. Watch this. Wait, this is good. We want what do we want for all these deportations? Trials. Listen.
If guilty people don't have due process rights, then innocent people don't have due process rights because you don't know if they're guilty or innocent until you've had a trial. That's what due process is. You've got to put on the evidence against people. People have a right to hear the evidence against them, and then they have a right to put on their evidence and make their arguments before a neutral fact finder, not a king or a president who wants to be a dictator.
Not at all how it works. Period. Now, Trump, so I'll tell you, speaking of weenies in the Senate, Tom Tillis cost Trump his nominee, Ed Martin, who's been cleaning up D.C., making D.C. a better place. And so Trump apparently has a new nominee. Now, this is Trump being handed a setback. And he's just a more mellow guy. He's not calling Tom Tillis any names. He's just saying, well, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, but he's a terrific person. And
talking about Ed Martin here.
The support from people that I thought, he's done a very good job. Crime is down 25% in D.C. During his period of time. I'm very disappointed in that. But I have so many different things that I'm doing now with the trade. I'm one person. I can only lift that little phone so many times in a day. But we have somebody else that will be great. I just want to say Ed is unbelievable, and hopefully we can bring him into, whether it's DOJ or whatever, in some capacity, because really outstanding. To me, it was disappointing, I'll be honest. I have to be straight. I was disappointed. A lot of people were disappointed. But that's the way it works sometimes, That's the way it works. And he wasn't rejected, but we felt it would be hard. And we have somebody else that we'll be announcing over the next 2 days who's going to be great.
Well, there you go. By the way, rumor has it that that person could be Jeanine Pirro from Fox News. I don't know how I feel about that. But imagine the Democrats, they sink Ed Martin and then they get another Fox News host. Well, we need to have a serious attorney and somebody who knows what they're doing here to clean up D.C. because the prosecutions in D.C. are going to be big. This is the center of all the criminal activity the Doge is uncovering, for example. That is all going to come to light. So it's very important. And it comes on the heels. Now, this is in a different district, likely, but it comes on the heels of yesterday's announcement from the New York Post that the FBI has opened a formal criminal probe into New York Attorney General Letitia James. And this is over her mortgage fraud, alleged mortgage fraud, where she claimed, for example, that a property in Virginia was her principal residence. This is in spite of the fact of her serving as New York's Attorney General, which of course requires her to be domiciled in the state of New York. Some other hokey pokey things like her listing her father as her husband on some documents. And then, of course, the Brooklyn property, the investment property, having 4 units instead of 5, which would have exceeded the number on her HAMP loan application. So got some favorable terms by misrepresenting what that unit was all about. This, I think, it's pretty open and shut. I mean, she either made those statements or she didn't on the loan applications. Not a lot of defenses to it. This is a big deal. So a lot of things going on, folks. All right, hopefully tomorrow my voice will be in better condition. I'll see you then. In the meantime, be brave and keep the faith. Things are looking good.